Solo mode is the solo mode, and you're all alone in the solo mode, and you miss your group, or you had some kids, but you bought some games. Why did you buy those games? It's the solo mode, it's the solo mode, and you're all alone in the solo mode, and your group is gone, or you had some kids, but you bought those games. Why did you buy those games? Hello and welcome to Game Brain Solo Mode. This is not your typical episode of Game Brain. This is a quick one-shot look at a solo board game. I am Matthew Robinson. One of the best pieces of advice I was ever given by anyone was don't be so precious. This was early in my writing career, and a friend of mine looked at me sternly after I handed him the 15th rewrite of the same script that I had been struggling over for 5 years. And he said, "Stop being so precious." And I threw that script out and I started a new script the next day. And it was the most freeing moment of my life. And that's what's been happening with this Cloudspire review, because this is a massive, epic, long game. And I have sat with it for months. And then the pandemic hit. If you are wondering, the date today is April 22nd, 2020. If you're in the future, let me know if we survived. Anyway, it has been a rough 5 or 6 weeks here for the world. I personally have been unaffected in terms of the health of myself and my family. I'm very thankful for that. I do have a handful of friends who have come down with it, and one very seriously, and she is at the moment stable at the hospital, and I really am worried for her and hope for her continued improvement. But outside of that, those are the real issues that we're all facing. I haven't been doing a lot of board gaming. Well, obviously I haven't been doing any multiplayer board gaming, but I haven't been doing any solo board gaming either, and I sort of expected I would if someone told me one day I would have 5 weeks of being locked in the house. But then I remembered I have 2 children. One is 6 months old, one is almost 2.5. And I haven't done anything but take care of my children and try to squeeze in a couple hours of work here and there. And of course, play Animal Crossing at night because I'm only human. But yeah, board gaming has been completely abandoned, and I have been hemming and hawing over doing my Cloudspire review for so long. I had been playing it for over a month before the pandemic hit, and now I just feel like, I can't even do my Cloudspire review because I have to keep playing, and there's so many scenarios, and there's so much. Don't be so precious, Matt. I'm going to give you my Cloudspire thoughts now. Why? Well, because it's just going to sit and stress me out longer if I don't do it. But also, today's the last day of the Kickstarter for Cloudspire's first Kickstarter expansion. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But I really wanted to get this out before then. They sent us a review copy of the base game of Cloudspire a while back. They also were kind enough, they being Chip Theory Games, they were also kind enough to send us a prototype of a very nice prototype. It's almost final, it feels, of the Kickstarter expansion that is available. 1 day left today, 24 hours. So you can't say that we're easily bought because we are very bad at getting our reviews out in time. But also, I'm hoping the Chip Theory people understand that extenuating circumstances, of course, with the pandemic at all. But either way, today I'm going to give you my thoughts in hopefully 30 minutes or less on the solo mode of Cloudspire. I'm not going to be talking about the multiplayer, of which there would be a lot to say. I'm not going to be talking about the cooperative scenarios, of which there would also be a lot to say. I'm going to be focusing completely on the Cloudspire solo modes, of which there is already a lot to say. And I am going to get into that starting now. Let's talk about Cloudspire. This is a 1 to 4 player game designed by Josh J. Carlson, Adam Carlson, and Josh Wilgus. The artists are Jared Blando, Melanie Lavely, and Anthony Letourneau. The publisher is Chip Theory Games. I have a long and storied love affair with Chip Theory Games, going back to almost pulling the trigger on Hoplomachus, pick one, but not at the end of the day, because right around the time I learned about it through Ricky Royal, one of my favorite YouTube solo gamers. Check him out, Box of Delight, Ricky Royal on YouTube. And around the same time I found out about Hoplomachus, I also found out about a game called Too Many Bones. I absolutely love Too Many Bones. I own everything that the word Too Many Bones has ever been printed on, everything that they sell. I am excitedly waiting for my giant box, custom-made box by Chip Theory Games that will hold all of the things I have. I still don't have the Splice and Dice Kickstarter delivered to me yet. That's hopefully coming sometime in May. I would go ahead and say Too Many Bones is my favorite solo game of all time. Does it deserve a review on this podcast? Absolutely. I have not gotten to it yet. Because, once again, don't be so precious. There's been a lot to say about it, and I feel like it deserves more time than I've had. That being said, we're going to talk about Cloudspire today. If you don't know what Chip Theory Games is, Chip Theory Games is the Rolls-Royce of board games. We are talking high price tags, high quality, high game design quality, and as much bling as you can possibly want in a game. Another strange tidbit to know about them, everything they make is waterproof. You could throw an entire game of Too Many Bones into the shallow end of your pool, dig it out, let it dry, and play just fine. That's because most of their components are either chips, thus the name Chip Theory Games. I'm talking high quality, heavy, beautiful poker chips, and also neoprene mats, that same stuff that your mouse pad is made of. That is the majority of their components. Outside of that, you'll also get some cards, but they are, you can hear what they sound like. Ooh, ASMR. They are like sort of like a plastic almost. See, they are waterproof. You could do anything to them, but they also are, if you bent them in half, they would stay that way forever, so don't do that. They have the first ever miniatures ever for this game as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and say, so they sent us a review copy of the base game. And I am very much appreciative of that. But then I went and bought every possible thing that they also sell for it. A, because I became obsessed with Cloudspire, and B, because I love supporting Chip Theory Games and everything they do. Will I buy my own copy of this at some point? Absolutely. Probably will do it now and just give this to Tom so he can enjoy it. That being said, I've already probably spent $200 or $300 on Cloudspire. Don't ask me how much I've spent on Too Many Bones. I'm really embarrassed. I own the beautiful 3-foot by 3-foot Cloudspire mat. I own the 2 available expansions that are already there for it. I own the premium health. Do I already own a set of premium health for Too Many Bones and then also went and bought it for Cloudspire? Yes, I have a problem with Chip Theory Games, an addiction. I love what they make. I love the way they make it. I love supporting their company. I want them to be making games for my children and my children's children. And I want to do everything I can to support that company. Sorry I didn't get this review out faster, guys and gals. Let's talk about Cloudspire. We're not going to talk about Too Many Bones today because they are very different games, although they do use similar components. Let us talk about Cloudspire. Cloudspire, as they would describe it, is a MOBA board game. If you don't know what a MOBA is, Google League of Legends. That's what a MOBA is. League of Legends is the most famous MOBA. You could also say Dota. I have dabbled in Dota and languished in League of Legends. They're not my favorite games. I've played them. I enjoy them. They're not fully my jam, though. Also not fully my jam, tower defense games. Not a huge fan of tower defense games. Played them a little bit, mostly on my phone. I don't even remember what they're called, but you know, that big one that you've probably played too. I've played that. They're good. They're not my favorite type of thing. They feel very much like puzzles. That being said, I, spoiler alert, really, really like Cloudspire. And I didn't expect to. I didn't expect to so much that I didn't back the first Cloudspire Kickstarter. You're probably saying, how can you call yourself a lifelong fan of Chip Theory Games and they had to send you a review copy of Cloudspire? You own everything of Too Many Bones, but you didn't back Cloudspire? That's how much I was not interested in the pitch of a MOBA board game or a tower defense board game, which is what this is. The minute I started playing it, though, my feelings changed, and perhaps this review will do that for you too as well. I'm going to give you my best to explain it. Again, we're not talking about the PvP. The PvP of this game is up to 4 people fighting each other, or 1v1, which is how I would probably prefer to play it. You take a faction, and the first person to crumble the other person's towers, bring down their fortress, wins the game. Or whoever does more damage to the other person's fortress by the end of the fourth wave, the fourth round. So what makes up a MOBA? Well, a MOBA is multiple lanes, usually, meaning 3 different paths that take you into somebody's fortress, that lead to a fortress. There are heroes in League of Legends. You control the heroes. And then there are minions. These are the waves of NPC, non-player character, computer-controlled, or in this case, AI-controlled mobs, minions, that just move with no thought and move in straight lines down the paths that you can manipulate. And if they reach the other person's fortress, they do a little damage to it. If they reach the other person's minions or heroes, they do a little damage to those. And you are doing your best to make sure that your waves of AI-controlled minions make it all the way to the end, better than your opponent's waves of minions, using your heroes, which you can control, that are a little more powerful, that have some more, that you can actually decide the strategy of, as opposed to the mobs that just move in a straight line, straight forward. And hopefully you can do more damage to your opponent's fortress before they do that. That is what this game is. That is what the solo mode of this game is. This is a highly asymmetrical game. There are 4 factions in the box. There is 1 more available as an expansion, and now with the Kickstarter that is on its very last day today, but hopefully they'll have some late pledging that'll last longer. There are 2 more, so you have 7 factions. Now, when I say highly asymmetrical, I mean if we take asymmetry as a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Dune, 1 being starting with various different resources in a game. Like you start with $6, I start with 5. If that's 1 on the asymmetry and Dune is a 10, I'd put this at a 9, 9.5 maybe. This is almost Dune levels of, oh, you are playing a different game than I. The closest reference I would give it to is Root. You are playing a different game than everyone else. And I would also say this rivals Root's level of teaching, meaning to learn to play a new faction, you must learn to play an entirely new game. And this is, I'm going to give this a BGG weight of my own. This is a 4 to a 4.5 in terms of the amount of effort you're going to have to put in to grok this game, to become fast at playing this game, to get to the point where you are not sitting with 3 reference sheets and 2 rule books and BGG open in front of you with the rules forum, and cross-referencing all of those in order to be able to play and play well. Now, here's the thing about me. That's my jam. I like that experience. I crave that experience. I want to have to wrestle with a game. Now, when I say wrestle with a game, I don't mean because the rule book is poorly written. It's not in this case. I don't mean because the rules are so vague and open to interpretation that we need a general consensus in order to learn how to play. I don't like that. This game does not do that. I mean a game that just has a lot of rules, a lot of edge cases, a lot of non-intuitive concepts that once you understand them, once you're able to imbibe them and digest them, they become second nature. I enjoy that. I enjoy very complicated board games. I like to keep my game brain busy in that way. You may like to keep your game brain busy in other ways. I don't always want to play a wildly complicated game. Sometimes I just want to play Castles of Burgundy or Everdell and relax, calm down a little bit, and play something that keeps my brain excited and happy, but not overheating with smoke coming out of my ears. This is a smoke coming out of your ears game, and sometimes that's what I want. Now, most of my smoke coming out of my ears games, I prefer as solo games because A lot of people don't want to have a smoke coming out your ears experience. And I don't often want to teach a smoke coming out of your ears experience to somebody else, because it's enough when smoke's coming out of my ears. And now we've said smoke coming out of ears too many times. I prefer super complicated games like this to be played alone. I play a lot of war games solo like that. Too Many Bones can be pretty complicated at times because there's so many words to look up and so many definitions and edge cases. This is more complicated than Too Many Bones, in my opinion, purely because there is a lot of AI stuff going on. We are 15 minutes in, and I still haven't told you what it feels like to play the solo version of Cloudspire. Let's do that right now. I'm going to use some video game references here because so did they when they designed this game. This is a game made by people who love video games. The game this is most like is Warcraft 3 as a solo experience. I would say it's also similar to StarCraft as a campaign experience. If you've played the campaigns of Warcraft 3 or StarCraft or any other RTS games, even though this is not technically RTS, it's turn-based, not real-time, then you understand what this is like. Now, at the beginning of StarCraft or Warcraft, you're given a faction, right? You're given the Terrans. You're given, oh geez, it's been so long since I played Warcraft, the Trolls, I'm guessing, or just the humans. And you have a certain arsenal available to you, a certain group of characters or buildings that you have at your disposal. Same thing happens in this. You are given a beautiful tray with chips in them. In those chips, you have a handful of things. You've got 3 heroes. You've got 6 different types of minions, and you've got 2 towers, or spires, as they're called in this game. Using that arsenal, you are then thrust into a scenario in which you are taught, like a very fun and exciting version of a tutorial, creative and interesting and puzzled out ways to use those tools in order to achieve your goals. You are not playing the same game as the 2-player or 4-player PvP version of this game. Just like as in StarCraft, if you play the campaign, you are not playing the same thing you're playing if you go to multiplayer. You're not playing you versus me. In StarCraft, you're given a task, right? You're given level 1 is like, just figure out how to build these buildings here in order to do this. They're puzzles in a lot of ways. What's the most efficient way to handle this puzzle in order to achieve the goal given to you by the game? Then you get to level 2. They add a couple more things. Then you get to level 3. Then you get to the end of the campaign, and you have, hopefully, completely understood that faction's abilities, creative ways to think about them, cool tricks that you have in your arsenal now, but just for that faction. And just when you feel you've mastered that faction, you are finished with that faction, and you move on to the Protoss, or you move on to the Elves, and you start all over. That's what Cloudspire Solo is. You are given this gorgeous book of solo scenarios, a ringed binder full of scenarios for all of the factions so far in the game. 4 plus the one that you can buy as an expansion called the Grige. You go through them in order. Now, you can pick the order you want. There's an order to the book, and there's a story, and the story is pretty cool. You get a pretty cool campaign that explains, sort of the lore behind why you're doing these things. There's a fight over a certain resource, and you now have to conquer this position, and if you have conquered it by wave 4, you achieve an objective. Now, there's a fun campaign element to this as well, because there are multiple objectives you can achieve. You have to achieve at least one or a certain one in order to achieve a victory on it. But if you achieve more, you get more points to spend on cool rule-breaking bonuses for the rest of that faction's campaign. That faction only. So each campaign, I believe, is about 8 solo scenarios. And then you're done with that. You don't have to do them in any order, though. There isn't an overarching story to it all. You pick a faction. You do their quote-unquote sort of tutorial puzzle levels in a row. And then you complete that faction. You move on to another one. And here's one of my favorite things that solo modes do. Once I've beaten all of these solo modes, I'm ready for PvP. And I can sit down and pick any faction, and I know that faction. Same as StarCraft or Warcraft. The analogy applies. Once you've beaten the game, it's time for multiplayer now. And you are ready to sit down, and you could pick any faction. You probably have a favorite by that point, the one that was the most fun, but you know it. You know the cool things they do because the game has taught you that. Would you only buy StarCraft or Warcraft for the campaign? Well, my answer is yes, because I never played the multiplayer of StarCraft or Warcraft, but I played the pants off of the campaigns in both of those for decades, I feel like, in my 20s. There's only one decade, never mind. If you like the campaigns in Warcraft or StarCraft, you are going to lose your mind for Cloudspire. It is that good and that awesome. It is as fun as Warcraft 3 was. And it feels the same. They are not just these little puzzles. This game is hard. This game is hard as hell. The first scenario, I'm going to go ahead and a little bit of criticism here. I think the first scenario in the game is way too hard for a first scenario in the game. I'm not exaggerating with you. I'm not exaggerating here. I played it 30 times. It takes about 15, 20 minutes to play it. Once it's set up, I swear to you I did it 30 times before I got a result I was happy with. Now, that's not because it's such a hard game. It is. That's because it's so much fun, and I was not willing to give up until I had all 3 objectives. I was like, I will figure this out. Because there's not a huge amount of randomness here. The AIs are going to do what it's going to do. The minions are going to march down the lanes in a certain way. Your choices in the game are which minions you're picking, which order they deploy in, what your heroes do, what spires you're buying to protect your fortress and to attack their minions. The order that you pick it becomes exponentially complicated by the second wave. You could have had 10,000 different choices. There is a little bit of randomness in what is available at the market. You can buy a random assortment of minions. It's also a little bit of randomness in terms of some of the NPCs that you can fight that randomly flip over in these sort of swamp tiles. So you can do a little exploring in the game. If your minions or heroes are next to a tile, you can choose to explore it. Sometimes there's bad guys under it. The reason you're doing that is because when you kill them, they give you some resources. They give you some money. And you can use that money in the next phase to buy more minions and better things. And so you need that. You need to get your economy going. So there's a little bit, sometimes you'll hit a harder minion. They're pretty balanced though. You usually always want to attack them. Some you just wish you were fighting later in the game rather than earlier. But this is not a highly random game. There are dice rolls, but the dice rolls are very mitigatable. The only time you're rolling dice in this game is when your spires are attacking minions. So spires are your defense towers. They are stacks of chips with some beautiful miniatures. If you bought those, we'll talk about that. Some beautiful chips, stacks of chips on top of each other that do a certain amount of automatic damage to anybody walking by it. That's the only time you roll a die. And the only difference is whether they do 1 damage, 2 damage, or 0 damage. One side of a 6-sided die is 0. One side is 2. The rest are 1s. There's not a huge amount of variance there. You're most likely rolling 1. If you get very lucky, roll a 2. If you get very unlucky, roll a 0. But you can also add more dice. You can upgrade your towers, your spires, in order to roll more dice, so to help mitigate that difference. What I'm trying to say is these are beautiful, fun, clockworky puzzles that you are highly motivated to figure out and do better, because by the time I beat that first one after playing it for 30 times, I kind of sailed through the next few because I had learned that much about this faction. I had sort of grokked them. I understood how to play them, and I loved that experience. And I knew that was happening as I was going, because it's like by the 20th time on that first scenario, it's like, oh, I get these dudes. I understand how the Brahmin work now. I kind of know that I want to stack 2 architects in round 2 because this does that and this does that and yada yada. And when I hit the second scenario, that time had paid off. And it was like, oh, I got some cool tricks here. And by the time I'd finished the Brahmin campaign completely, I was really excited to play PvP. Then the quarantine happened. So I didn't get to play any PvP. But I'm really excited to, because now it's like, oh, I know these dudes. I know all my arsenal. I know what they do. I know how they move. I know some fun tricks that you have to figure out in later scenarios. Some sort of stuff that you didn't realize at first. Like, oh, that's why this keyword exists on this guy. That's cool. Okay. that's a fun little tool I have in my arsenal. That being said, if I play them against anybody else who hasn't spent 50 hours playing the Brahmin, I'm going to absolutely trounce them, which is a PvP issue that we don't have to worry about. Because I'm not trying to sell you the PvP game. I'm not trying to sell you anything, to be honest. I'm just trying to share for you my experience and my joy that I've experienced with Cloudspire so far. But if you're anything like me, I think it probably will have a positive or potentially negative side effect of making you spend some money on this game. But that's neither here nor there for me. So you go through these scenarios, you learn these factions, you move on to the next one. Let's talk about them, though. Are they all fun? Are they all different? They're all very fun and different, in my opinion. You start out with the Brahmin. You don't have to. That's who I started out with. That's the first in the rulebook. These are defensive-minded trolls. Now, it's interesting. They give you, I guess that's pretty typical. I guess, well, I don't know. I don't know if you usually start with sort of the slowest and most defensive faction first. But there's a method to their madness here, and it's because this teaches you how to play the game. This is a game of patience. This is a game of choosing your windows. This is a game of this is a marathon, not a sprint game. And this is a game of one or two resources more than your opponent is the difference in winning or losing, because you need to get to certain thresholds to purchase certain minions in the next wave. You need to be prepared for that. You need to know what minions they're capable of buying. So while I'm learning the Brahmin, I'm playing against the AI of another faction. And I'm also then learning that faction. So in the Brahmin, in the first one, I played against the heirs, the bird people. Lovely little sort of Everdell-esque bird warriors. Like literally birds, like little birds with, not like humanoids with bird heads, birds that have swords and awesome armor and like fly and shoot missiles. I learned a lot about the heirs because in order to play the Brahmin, in order to control the AI of the heirs, you got to understand the heirs. So in every scenario, you're kind of being forced to learn how both sides play. And that's also why it took me 30 tries, because there's a lot. I'm telling you, this is a 4.0 to a 4.5 weight game because there are so many keywords. So now the chips in this game are the miniatures, right? These are your minions, these are your heroes, and all the information on them is on a chip. So how do they do that? How do they have, usually in a Magic the Gathering card, you would have a little brick of text, right, that tells you how this card works. They have 2 or 3 words on each chip. And why? Because those words are keywords that then take you to a keyword master list, and you look up what that keyword does. And that takes time. And eventually you'll memorize most of them, especially in, all of them in one faction. And then you got to move on to the next one because they all have completely different keywords. Very rarely is a keyword in one faction also used in another. So you have to learn, 20 new words. Like, what does impale do? Well, eventually you'll know what impale does. And what does armored mean, or survival? That's all it says on the chip, but eventually you'll realize that means, instead of taking 2 damage, you always take 1, or you get a free attack on a spire when you walk past it, etc., etc. That takes time, and that takes energy. And if that doesn't sound fun to you, every time you bring out a chip, oh yeah, what does air defense mean? Going to the checklist, looking up air defense, reminding yourself what it does, and then reminding yourself how it interacts with other ones. Edge cases, guys, tons of edge cases, tons of keywords. But I dig that. That's an experience that I like. If I'm sitting down for a solo game, and I'm in a lucky position where I do most of my gaming at my writing office. I rent a space a few blocks from my house. That's where I'm recording at the moment. And I'm able to leave Cloudspire sitting on a table there behind my writing desk. And that's very helpful because it's not the fastest setup and teardown. It's better than Too Many Bones. You're just putting out some neoprene matte pieces on the board. You're following the guide. You're getting your 2 factions ready. It's a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of time. But if you can set it out there, it was the reason I was able to do it 30 times in a row. Leaving the neoprene matte down also helps because it keeps everything organized. So that experience, that StarCraft campaign, that Warcraft campaign, I'm not exaggerating when I say they they put as much effort into making sure this wasn't just a boring tutorial that I feel like Blizzard put into those games. If you remember those games, those are fun. Those campaigns are cool. There are stakes. Every new scenario opens up a new world for you, a whole new toolbox of things you can try, and you're excited to learn it. You're excited to try them. You're excited to try it against a different enemy. You're excited to try it in a different location with different terrain. All that stuff's present here. And the puzzles are smart. They're interesting. They put as much effort into the solo campaigns of this game as they put into any other aspect of it, to the point where I can recommend this as a solo-only experience. I don't know if I will ever play PvP. I don't know how much PvP will be an enjoyable experience for me because I will have 100 hours in this game, and I'll be teaching it to somebody who will have 10 minutes in the game. And I'm going to trounce them. I'm going to destroy them. And I don't know if that's going to be fun for me or fun for them. Man, if this was college and like I had a roommate or a couple roommates and we all got good at this, I'd just burn all my other games. I just feel like this would be the only game I'd need, and we would just get so deep into it. And I think it deserves that level of depth. There has been some talk about balance issues in the PvP realm. I leave that to you to do research on. The Cloudspire designers have gone into depth talking about balance changes and stuff. I believe they are planning some small balance changes as well in the expansion. That is irrelevant in the solo version of this because balance is just a deciding factor of whether or not you enjoy something being hard or not. And these are hard, but beatable. And when you figure out how to beat them, it's a good feeling because you feel smart because these are hard and they're well designed and the puzzles are interesting in the exact same way that Warcraft or Starcraft are puzzles. You know, those campaigns, you got to figure out the optimal build strategy, the build path, the way to there's a whole thing about leveling up your fortress here, which is unlocking different tech trees, different skills, which ones to unlock in which order, which minions to buy. I mean, I'm telling you, the choices become exponentially more complicated as time goes by. Every round in this game, even if you played it 30 times, you're not going to play it. By the time you get to round 2, you're making different choices. And I mean, you literally could do exactly the same thing outside of the few bits of randomness that I explained. But you won't because you'll want to try different things. And even then, is there replayability is a good question. Would I play through these again? I would, because I feel like you get better. There's still little ways I could do this better. You know, but by my 30th try, I was able to hit all 3 objectives, but I barely got it. I bet on my 50th, I could smoke them. I bet on my 50th, I could do it in my sleep. And that's cool. If that's something you get into. If you're a tinkerer, if you're somebody who likes improving and seeing that improvement in a Dead Souls kind of video game where it's like the only real progress is how better you get as a player. If you like that experience, you're going to get that in Cloudspire. That is something that I definitely feel I have in this experience. So I obviously really like this game. Is it beating Too Many Bones? Probably my favorite solo only game. I don't know yet. It's a very different experience. I haven't beaten all of the campaigns yet. I still have. I mean, this honestly, like I feel like this is a 100-hour game. This is a Gloomhaven level game, and it has a Gloomhaven level price. This is a $120 game, guys, and that's just for the box. That's for the base. There are 2 available expansions right now. There's the Griege faction, which is just a 5th faction. There is the Portal Seekers expansion, which is more market minions, more options in your market, and more exploration tiles as well, chips that you can explore. That's going to obviously help a lot in replayability. More things that are going to come out. It basically is taking the small bit of randomness in the game and giving you more randomness, which may or may not be something you like. I bought them. I haven't actually thrown them into my campaign yet because I really want to learn all the chips in the market first, and I really want to learn all the location chips, and I will add them in when I feel like I really know those well. There is premium health. It comes with sort of lightweight plastic health chips that you stack underneath your minions. I like the premium ones. completely unnecessary. I also have the Cloudspire Sky Mat, a beautiful 3x3 mat. It's actually, this does have some use in terms of quickly being able to set it up, and also moving the health and resource wheels. They move really well when they're on top of the playmat material, as opposed to when they're on just your wooden table or something. Then I find them hard to use. I actually used dice until I got the mat because I didn't like having to take them out and move them and put them back down. Then there is the most egregious of all add-ons you could have. For $65, you could buy the miniature expansion. What's that? They're stands for your Cloudspire chips. Now, at first I went, come on, guys, I'm not spending $65 on a cosmetic only little miniature for my chip. And now that I have them, they're the most important part of the game to me for a gameplay reason. In 2 seconds, now here's the thing: your Spire chips, the chips that are spires in the game, the most important piece of the game. It's called Cloudspire. You're building spires. These are your fortresses that are going to be firing. Where you're placing them is so important. Which ones you place. You have multiple options of paths to upgrade them so they do different things. This is the game, is building these towers. It's a tower defense game. It's a MOBA. These go down, you're done. Not technically, but you're not going to win if you don't have any ways of combating the waves of minions coming at you. They are the same chips as everything else in the game. So if you've got a game board in front of you, a game state full of chips, to be able to tell the difference very quickly between what is a spire and what is a hero or what is a minion is not a small thing. It really helps the gameplay. It helps the immersion is massive, obviously. It just looks dope. I mean, each faction has a completely different sculpt for their towers. Just look them up. Look at the Cloudspire miniature expansion. It's awesome. Just from a lore standpoint, just from an immersion standpoint. I mean, I don't know, guys. If you're already in for like $300 on Cloudspire, like, be in for $360. But that's I mean, I don't know. We're already absurd with the money here. Like, this is crazy. This is like I said, this is an embarrassing amount of money you've spent on your hobby. But look, everybody's dollars are worth different amounts to them, depending on how many you got in your bank account, or how many expenses you have, or how many children you have, or how many dependents you have, how many stresses you have. So, it's up to you how you spend your entertainment money. And I'm just here to tell you how I've spent mine. Now, I've spent a lot on this game, and I didn't even buy the base game because they sent it to us as an expansion. That being said, I have an embarrassing amount of money I've spent already, and I will buy this game for myself as well and give this copy to Tom at some point. It's sold out now, so don't ask me right now, Tom. Let's talk about the expansion really quick. This is a bit long for a normal episode, but hey, don't be so precious, Matt. The expansion, which is in its last day right now, if you're hearing this on April 22nd, the day I'm going to release this, comes with 2 new expansions, 2 new factions. They did not send us the solo campaigns for these factions. They said we could ask for them, the prototype versions of them. This all came to me during the pandemic when I have had no time, so I didn't want to bother them and ask them for something I wouldn't have time to get to the table. I have not played the solo versions of this. That being said, they sent us a free prototype. I have also backed the Kickstarter because I want these. I want the full versions. I want the whole thing. I want to support them, and I want 2 new factions because I'm going to finish all the campaign modes for this game, and I want 2 more new campaign modes because they are awesome and really fun. And to me, probably the only version of the game I'm going to play. I don't know how much PvP I'll play for reasons I gave. So in the base game, I'll give you the basics of what you get. You got the Brahmin. These are trolls, defensive, slow, hit hard. You've got the Grove Tenders. You know Groot? You know Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy? Okay, Grove Tenders. The Greege, insects. These are the nasty tunnel-digging, dirt-throwing cockroach people. Then you've got the Narora. Have you seen Avatar? You know, the blue guys. Narora. We've got the Airs, like I said. Awesome birds. Birds with missiles. Now, in the expansion, we get 2 new things. We get Horizon's Wrath. These are pirates, a pirate airship that docks at the floating islands. I feel like I also never told you the story of Cloudspire. Floating Avatar lands, and we're fighting over a resource. that is being drilled up out of the ground, and whoever has the most of it is the ruler of the universe. Horizon's Wrath. These are the pirates. Their fortress is an awesome spaceship, pirate ship that docks in the air. Then you've got the Uprising. The Uprising are a potpourri of characters, disenfranchised and angry. These are the woodland creatures from Root. These are all of the pissed off, disenfranchised people coming up into the higher echelon in order to band together to fight against the privileged factions. The Uprising and Horizon's Wrath are the two new factions you will get by supporting the Kickstarter, which is available only today. I'm so sorry, but also I'm sure they'll have some late pledges. With this, you also get some of the the rule balances, which is Cloudspire Chip Theory is always so good about sending everybody who owns things for as cheap as possible, if not free, a little upgrade pack to make sure that everybody's patches are up to date, much like a video game. They deliver you a patch, you throw out the old cards, you add in the new ones. Bingo, bango, you're playing the same as everything. But they also go out of their way to always say you don't have to do that. The games are always going to work no matter what version you're playing. They're play tested like crazy. They're still good. They just found a couple little tiny things. If you never had them, you wouldn't notice them. But if you have them, you might as well play with them. So yeah, you are going to get the co-op scenarios. There's an entire co-op version of this game that you could play with another person where you're going through an entire scenario just like the solo one. I haven't played that. There is so much game in here. For $120, that sounds like an insane amount of money to spend. But the solo campaign alone is 60 to 100 hours. The PvP could be twice that. The cooperative could be 100 hours. I mean, we're talking 3-4. This becomes a lifestyle game. So at that price point, your dollar to hour ratio could be better than almost any other game in your collection if you really get into it. How do you know if you're really going to get into it, though? It's a huge ask to drop a couple $100 on a game. So do your research, see if you can play it on Tabletop Simulator or try it, watch a lot of playthrough videos, read the rule books for sure. No Chip Theory game is at a price point where you just go, give it a whirl. They're crazy expensive. And especially if you really want to get into it, then you're going to start buying all the expansions. These are lifestyle games, so do your research and figure out if you like them. I hope I've done a good job of letting you know what I like about them, and I like a lot. And I am a lifelong Chip Theory game advocate, and I will always be. If anything, this one's taught me, hey, if Chip Theory Games makes a game that you don't think sounds like your thing, yeah, it's probably still your thing. You should probably check it out. I've learned that here. I really enjoy it. Hopefully I gave you a good sense of what the solo experience of Cloudspire is. Once again, the final day for the Kickstarter, which is called Cloudspire, Ankar's Plunder, and Series Reprint. There's also a chance to get everything they've already made available again, as they always do in their Kickstarters. Check it out. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are doing well in this quarantine pandemic situation. Again, if anybody from the future could let me know if we all survive this, that would be great. It's April 22nd. You could just send me a message in your time machine. I think we're going to be all right. I'm feeling optimistic at the moment. And I'm hoping that one day I get to play with friends and also have the mental ability to play more solo games, because right now I am exhausted at the end of the day, and it is absolutely amazing that I was able to get this podcast out to you today. Also, one last thing. Our podcast has been nominated for a Golden Geek Award. That's really amazing. This is our first year as a podcast. Thank you so much to everybody who listens. I hope that we are one of your favorite podcasts, and I hope we bring you pleasure and entertainment throughout the years to come. I know we will do our best. If you like the show, if you have the inclination, go to the Golden Geek Awards at BGG and vote for us as one of your favorite podcasts. We would appreciate it. But no pressure. Do you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope everybody is doing great, staying healthy, staying safe, staying at home. Bye-bye. Solo mode is the solo mode, and you're all alone in the solo mode, and you miss your group, or you had some kids, but you bought some games. Why did you buy those games? It's the solo mode, it's the solo mode, and you're all alone in the solo mode, and your group is gone, or you had some kids, but you bought those games. Why did you buy those games? Sorry.